Between 1917 and 1979, more than 172 military installations operated across Florida. The state trained more combat personnel during the Second World War than any other in the nation. Then, quietly, most were closed, demolished, or absorbed into the cities growing around them. Overgrown runways, crumbling bunkers, and missile barns still sit hidden in plain sight. We are counting down 11 of the most forgotten sites, from training fields swallowed by farmland, to nuclear launch sites buried under parking lots, to an island fortress surrounded by open sea. The countdown begins in 1917 at a grass airstrip in rural Arcadia. In the 11th place, a patch of farmland southeast of Arcadia marks the forgotten beginning of Florida's military aviation era. Carlstrom Field opened its gates in September 1917, one of the first United States Army Air Service training camps built as the United States entered World War I. On these 700 acres, wooden hangars and barracks rose almost overnight, sheltering Curtiss JN-4 Jenny biplanes and the first wave of Army cadets. Over the next 6 years, nearly 1,000 young pilots trained here, their names recorded in ledgers now gathering dust in the National Archives. After the armistice, the field's urgency faded. By 1923, the last engines fell silent, and the land reverted to DeSoto County for agriculture. Today, only faint traces remain: overgrown taxiways, the outline of a mess hall, and the ghost of a runway visible from the air. Carlstrom Field's story is one of rapid mobilization and quiet erasure, a foundation for Florida's later military boom, now nearly invisible beneath plowed fields and pasture. In the 10th place, a vast expanse beneath the terminals and runways of Tampa International Airport conceals the vanished footprint of Hillsborough Army Airfield. Activated in 1942, this 1,500-acre campus quickly became a key node in the Army Air Force's School of Applied Tactics, hosting B-24 Liberator bombers and C-47 transport squadrons. Wartime records show a surge in operations. Sortie rates climbed by more than 30% each year as crews cycled through relentless training rotations. The original north-south runway, once the backbone of the base's flight line, now lies buried beneath the airport's main concourse. In 1949, the federal government transferred the property to civil authorities, setting in motion a transformation that would erase nearly every trace of its military past. Today, travelers pass through a modern airport with no sign of the wartime infrastructure that once defined the land. The story of Hillsborough Army Airfield is one of total conversion, where the intensity of war gave way to the routines of civilian air travel, leaving behind only fragments in old Federal Aviation Administration deeds and faded maps. Number 9. Drew Army Airfield sits beneath the taxiways and service roads of modern Tampa, but its wartime past lingers in overlooked fragments of concrete and payroll ledgers. Opened in 1941, Drew became a hub for fighter pilot training, with P-40 Warhawks and P-51 Mustangs roaring over nearly 600 acres. Yet the story that sets Drew apart unfolded on the ground. By 1944, the Army rotated roughly 300 German prisoners of war through a camp on site, assigning them to local citrus farms as seasonal laborers. These men picked and packed oranges under guard, their wages recorded in ledgers now housed at the Museum of Florida History. For many, the daily routine offered a strange normalcy, far from the battlefields of Europe. After the war, Drew's airstrips were deeded to the city of Tampa in 1955. Today, sections of the original concrete endure as service roads, a silent record of both military ambition and the human lives layered beneath Florida's aviation sprawl. 8th place, Orlando Army Air Force Base once sprawled across more than 2,300 acres on the outskirts of Central Florida, a concrete city built to forge the next generation of bomber crews. Launched in 1942, the base became the headquarters for the Army Air Force's School of Applied Tactics, orchestrating heavy bomber training on a scale unmatched in the region. B-17 flying fortresses and later B-29 superfortresses lined up on 12 hard stands per runway, their engines roaring through a relentless cycle of sorties, logged in the 475th Bombardment Group's daily records. At its wartime peak, the site managed a throughput of thousands of airmen, with a network of aprons, taxiways, and training ranges stretching deep into the Florida interior. After 1947, the base was absorbed into the expanding McCoy Air Force Base, then folded almost seamlessly into the fabric of Orlando International Airport. Today, fragments of runway and cracked hardstands linger in restricted corners, nearly erased by the city's growth. They are a reminder that entire military complexes can vanish beneath the pace of civilian expansion, their history reduced to hidden boundaries on airport maps in the fading memory of Bomber City. Number 7. The former Naval Air Station Lee Field at Green Cove Springs reveals a striking transformation along the banks of the St. Johns River. Opened in September 1940 as a naval aviation school, the base first echoed with the engines of Grumman F-6F Hellcats and the amphibious PBY-5A Catalinas, their patrols charted in squadron logs that speak to a relentless training schedule. Over 1,500 acres became a proving ground for carrier landings and coastal defense, with pilots rotating through a cycle of flight exercises above the river's calm surface. Yet, the story of Lee Field takes an unexpected turn after World War II. By 1946, the runways gave way to the Atlantic Reserve Fleet, a mothball fleet where more than 600 surplus naval vessels were moored side by side along 13 concrete piers. Destroyers, escorts, and auxiliary ships rested in the Florida sun, their fates suspended in the post-war uncertainty. For over a decade, the riverfront was a forest of masts and hulls, watched over by thousands of Navy personnel and civilian workers. When the Navy withdrew in 1962, the silence returned. Today, rusting mooring cleats, empty piers, and scattered concrete foundations linger beside the industrial park, silent witnesses to a waterfront that once held the might of a forgotten fleet. Number 6. Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale stands as a crossroads of wartime routine and enduring legend. Activated in 1942, this naval air station became a relentless training ground for torpedo bomber crews, with more than 1,600 pilots and navigators cycling through its classrooms and runways in just 4 years. The base specialized in the TBM and TBF Avenger, the Navy's workhorse of the era, and its daily operations were meticulously logged, sortie after sortie, each pilot drilled in overwater navigation and anti-submarine tactics. Yet, it is the disappearance of Flight 19 on December 5, 1945, that forever marks this place. 5 Avengers and 14 men vanished during a routine training mission, sparking one of the most extensive air and sea searches in American history. The official investigation concluded with more questions than answers, leaving a mystery that lingers in the public imagination. After decommissioning in 1946, the airfield's grid was slowly absorbed by the sprawl of Fort Lauderdale. The original runway lines now lie beneath suburban streets and airport service roads. Still, the main hangar survives, repurposed as the Naval Air Station Fort Lauderdale Museum, its walls lined with artifacts, flight logs, and the preserved Link Trainer Building, one of the few tangible links to the base's storied past. For most residents, the legend of Flight 19 is a faint echo, its origins hidden in plain sight among warehouses and parking lots, while the evidence of a once vital military hub fades quietly into the fabric of the city. Number 5. Nike missile site HM-40 stands alone on the southern tip of Key Biscayne, a stark, concrete reminder of the Cold War urgency. Built in 1964 under Army Corps contracts issued just months after the Cuban Missile Crisis, this installation was designed to intercept Soviet bombers before they could reach Miami. The heart of the site is a weathered missile barn, its reinforced doors still guarding the launch pits below. Here, Battery B of the 2nd Battalion, 52nd Artillery, maintained a force of 135 soldiers, each trained in the strict protocols of nuclear defense. The Nike Hercules missiles stored within could be armed with W-31 nuclear warheads, but only after a 2-key release system was activated, one key held by the launch officer, the other by a separate crew, ensuring no single person could launch without consensus. 4 launchers sat ready, 2 always on alert, their warheads kept in standby status as required by Army Technical Manual TM9-1300-232. The site operated around the clock until July 1979, when the nationwide Nike program was deactivated and the base fell silent. Today, the missile barn and overgrown launch pits remain accessible by a dirt road, their concrete forms half swallowed by subtropical growth. Unlike the demolished HM-95, HM-40's relics endure, offering a rare, tangible link to an era when nuclear readiness shaped the southern edge of Florida. Number 4. Nike Missile Site HM-95 reveals a vanished chapter of Cold War urgency, now buried beneath the sprawl of southwest Miami. Activated in October 1962 at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, the site was constructed in a matter of weeks. It was an emergency response that brought a crew of 120 and 2 live W-31 nuclear warheads to a remote stretch of Chrome Avenue. For nearly 2 decades, the missile barn of HM-95 and its subterranean launch magazines stood as a silent guarantee also of nuclear readiness, with Army technical orders requiring round-the-clock alert status and strict 2-key control protocols. Yet the memory of this arsenal has faded almost entirely. In 1982, demolition crews razed the surface structures under a county permit, sealing the underground silos and erasing the last visible traces from the landscape. Today, the only evidence of HM-95's existence lies beneath a commercial parking lot, subterranean magazine tops now capped and inaccessible, mapped only in Army Corps blueprints and the recollections of former crew. Unlike the preserved HM-69, HM-95's story is one of deliberate erasure. The urgency of its construction has been replaced by the quiet indifference of commerce, leaving the infrastructure of nuclear war hidden beneath everyday life, its history nearly lost to public memory. Coming to the top 3, Nike Missile Site HM-69 stands alone as the only fully preserved Cold War nuclear missile installation in Florida, and one of the last in the United States that the public can still enter. Hidden deep within the Everglades on a tract known as the Hole in the Donut, this site was activated in May 1965 as part of the Homestead Miami Defense Area, a direct response to the Cuban Missile Crisis. Unlike its counterparts, HM-69's missile barn was built on concrete pilings to keep it above the marsh, forming the distinctive ringed layout that still encircles the launch area. The Army stationed a crew of 110 soldiers here, maintaining 4 Nike Hercules missiles, 2 always on alert, each capable of carrying a nuclear warhead. For 14 years, the base operated under strict protocols, with nuclear weapons stored in a hardened vault and 2 key release systems ensuring no single person could ever launch a missile alone. When the Nike program was deactivated in July 1979, HM-69 was placed on caretaker status. Unlike other Florida sites that were demolished or sealed, this installation survived intact, protected by its isolation within a national park. In 2004, the site was listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and today, the National Park Service offers guided tours each winter. Visitors walk the original launch area, stand inside the elevated missile barn, and listen as former Army veterans recount daily life at the edge of nuclear readiness. The pink-painted administration building, the donut barn on stilts, and the empty launch rails remain as silent witnesses to an era when the threat of nuclear war reached deep into the Florida wilderness. HM-69 endures not as a relic of fear, but as a rare, tangible reminder of the Cold War's shadow, preserved so that its history cannot be easily erased. In second place, Egmont Key stands as a layered relic at the mouth of Tampa Bay, where the remains of a 19th-century brick fortress meet the concrete scars of World War II. The island's original fortifications, begun in the early 1900s, were part of a coastal defense network designed to protect the harbor from enemy ships. By the 1940s, those old masonry walls gained new relevance as the United States braced for submarine threats and aerial attack. Army engineers poured fresh concrete for Battery 101, installing anti-ship guns atop the weathered bastions, while a reinforced pier extended from the shore to receive patrol boats and supply barges. During the war, Egmont Key also supported Navy floatplane operations. OS-2U Kingfisher scout planes tied down on the sand, their crews scanning the Gulf for submarines or drifting mines. The evidence of this dual era remains visible. A rusted gun mount here, the outline of a float plane tie down there, and the battered concrete slab of the pier, now worn by storms and salt spray. The island itself covers just 58 acres, yet its ruins stretch across time. Brick casemates from the Spanish-American War, concrete bunkers from the 1940s, and the still operational lighthouse, its beams sweeping past crumbling battlements. Today, Egmont Key is accessible only by day ferry, its isolation preserving the sense of a forgotten outpost. Visitors wander among the ruins, reading faded interpretive signs and watching as erosion steadily claims more of the shoreline. Unlike the vanished bases buried beneath highways and airports, Egmont's decay is on full display, an open archive of Florida's coastal defenses, still crumbling in the sun and salt air, waiting for the tide to erase the last traces of its military past. And finally, in first place, Fort Jefferson rises from the turquoise sweep of the dry Tortugas as a monument to military ambition and the passage of time. Construction began in 1846, with the Army Corps stacking more than 16 million bricks to form a six-sided bastion spanning 16 acres, ringed by a moat and surrounded by 70 square miles of shallow lagoon. For decades, its massive walls and gun casemates stood as America's southernmost bulwark, yet the fort never saw a battle. Disease and isolation wore down its garrison, and by the late 19th century the Army withdrew, leaving the structure to weather storms and salt air. Wartime brought a brief return to purpose. Navy records detail the arrival of the 5th Naval Construction Battalion, who adapted the fort's parade ground into a seaplane outpost. PBY-5A Catalinas landed in the lagoon, their hulls bobbing in the surf as crews scanned the Gulf for German U-boats. The fort's remote cells housed prisoners of war, while Army engineers shored up crumbling ramparts and logged each supply run in the Navy's seaplane manifests. Yet, even at the height of wartime activity, Fort Jefferson's vast emptiness dwarfed the human presence, a fortress built for thousands, now echoing with only a handful of voices. Today, the fort's brickwork remains largely intact, its arched corridors and gun ports open to the wind. Coral and seagrass reclaim the moat, while seabirds nest atop the ramparts. Access is by boat or seaplane alone, a journey of 70 miles from Key West that underscores the site's profound isolation. Unlike bases erased by highways or airports, Fort Jefferson endures as both ruin and relic, its scale and solitude a silent rebuke to the amnesia that has swallowed so much of Florida's military past. Here, the history is impossible to ignore. A colossal fortress marooned at the edge of the continent, bearing witness to the rise and retreat of empires, and to the slow, relentless work of nature reclaiming what war once built. Across all 11 sites, a stark pattern emerges. Once vital military strongholds vanish into Florida's everyday life, leaving only scattered ruins and fading records. The sheer scale of this erasure underscores how quickly national memory can dissolve, even for places that shaped wars and communities. It's a silent reminder. History isn't just what we preserve, but what we allow to be forgotten. Which stories do you think still lie hidden beneath our feet?